Welcome to another episode of Project Pastel Devlog. In this episode, I'll be showing you how I handle Json templates using an open source library I've made, and also how I use those templates to create Ashley entities. Ashley is a fairly simple ECS, which stands for Entity Component System. It allows to define data organized in logical groups called components for entities in your game. The behavior of those entities within your game is then driven by the data, and they can be easily changed at random by adding, removing, or modifying the data of components. So let's start by looking at the JSON templates and how I handle them. So we have these two given files, sample.json, which has a field of A or value of B, and sample2.json with a field of B with the value of C. These two files will be used as an examples in this JSON template walkthrough. So I have here an inherit JSON file, which uses this specific tag. Anything that has the TPL colon belongs to the template language that I've created. So I specify that this JSON extends tutorial sample JSON. So extends this one, JSON A and value N and B. And in addition to this, it has a field B of value of 1. So when I execute or process this template, the output will be this. So A field has a value of B. This is because it extends this value, so inherits this value from this sample.json, and also we'll have the field B with value of 1, which is the one that is defined here. So this is the simplest case of loading some data from a template, in this case the sample.json, but we can go into something more complicated. So for example, we can put the template as a sub-object. So in here, as you can see, I create a field of name included and specify that the object in here extends the sample.json. And as a result, I'll have this where I have the included field. It will include everything that is in this file. And then in addition to this, anything else I specify here. So now you might want to think, what if I want to override some information from this file? So let's say I have multiple fields in the sample.json and I want to override some of them. Well, it's pretty simple. So I specify here that I once again extend the sample.json and I override the value of A with a value of C, which means that whatever is here, A, B, is going to be overridden. Of course, if I had more fields here, I could selectively override only some of them. And as a result of running this template, I'll have only the A of value of C with the value of C because this is the only field that I'm extending and I'm overriding it. This template language that I've created here with the TPL colon also allows multiple inheritance. So you can, instead of passing one string here with the path to the file, you can define an array and load multiple files here. So in this case, I'm loading this sample.json and also the sample2.json below. And as a result of this, I'll have both fields included in my output object. Of course, if there are some overrides here, so let's say that the sample2.json will also have a value, also field A defined, the overrides will be working in the order that they are defined here. So first, this is going to be loaded, the sample.json, and then sample2.json will be loaded. So in that order. So there's one more extra feature that this template language has, which is it allows to also remove fields from those that are being loaded with the extends tag. So the way it works is you specify TPL colon remove fields, which basically filters out, which it works in conjunction with the TPL extends within the same object. And it allows to filter out those fields that are matching this name. So in this case, when I wrote the sample.json, so this A, B, I'll remove fields A, and as a result, I'll get an empty object because I removed all of the fields. And just as in case of the multiple inheritance, instead of passing a single string value, I can pass an array of strings with a list of fields that I want to filter out. There's one more field or field name that is in this template language that I introduced, which is TPL comment, which allows to add comment to the object. It will be completely transparent in the resulting. This is only just to allow us, whoever is working on this, allow to have some kind of order and understanding what happens here. So for example, I have other comment here, inherit basic data, for example. And once again, the output will be this entire tag will be, the entire field will be omitted from the output here. So now the question is, how do we actually load those templates? And if you use the library that I provided the link in the description of this video, you can just write this code. So JSON template loader, load template from file, specify the file that you want to load, in this case tutorial/inherit JSON, and as well how to resolve those different paths that you have within this file, because they are strings and you have to resolve them into actual files. So in this case, I specify this as class path file handler resolver, but you can have anything else that you need in your project. So this template loader returns JSON value, which is something that you can use in your project directly, or use the JSON class provided with libgdx that allows you to translate those values, this value, into an actual Java object of the type that you are using. So in your project, you can use those templates any way you wish. Just saves some kind of duplication of data, as well as makes it more readable because you can split the huge file into multiple smaller files that make more sense if you wanted to be able to come back to them and modify them at a later time. However, the way I use this in my project is that I've wrote an additional small class that is also available in the open source library that I've provided, that allows me to define Ashley entities using these templates. So as an example here, I have a template for an enemy, which defines two components, strength and health component. And I've defined some values for the fields of those classes, strength and health. Then in your project, of course, in your game, you might have multiple instances of the same enemy being spawned. The only difference is between them going to be where they are spawned, so the position of or any other characteristics you might have. So what I do here is I have this template for general information. You can have sprite, how it looks, how it animates, anything else you wanted here. However, when you actually define the one particular instance of the enemy, you can say that I actually extend the enemy template, this file above here, and I just specify, add an additional component, position component, with a vector2 value position with a 12 and 6 x and y coordinates. That way I can, rather than if I had this multiple enemies in my game, rather than if I decided to modify the strength of an enemy to be 12 instead of 10, rather than modifying multiple files that have one for each enemy, I can modify this template, and that way anything else will, all the enemies that are being defined using this template will inherit basically this information, and the strength will be modified for all of them. Of course, this doesn't work on runtime, so if I'm modifying the file on runtime, this information is not going to be modified. This is only on designing time, so when you're actually working on it and when you start the game, this information is set in stone. So the way I load these entities, the data from the entity, is using the Ashley template entity loader class, which has a load template method, where I pass the file that I want to load, instance of the JSON object, as well as, once again, the file handler resolver to be able to load any includes that are inside of this template of this file. And this returns an Entitydev object, which is a very simple object containing the array of components. This is Ashley components here. And from this entity definition, I can create an entity inside of the Ashley engine by doing create entity, and then for each of those components here, I add it to it. And then once I'm finished with them, once I'm finished with adding all the components, I do add entity on the engine itself. Okay, I hope you find this useful. If you do, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.